Okay. Evil, satanic, violent, mindless, and barbaric. These are all good words to describe metal music as a whole. And however, just with anything else, painting with such a broad stroke is often a mistake and unfair. So over the next several minutes, I'm going to be explaining to you what the metal genre is really all about and why this sort of like definition is unfair. For as long as metal music has been around, there's been like this stigma surrounding it that, and it's been falsely accused of being nothing but mindless noise, or it's evil or satanic, or it's violent. It's a violent form of music and promotes that violence. It's actually not a mindless form of music, and it's quite intelligently written for the most part, and there's usually an exceptional vocalist. Now there are terrible bands like with any genre of music, and they do promote that stereotype, but for the most part, there's plenty of bands that don't. And even in genres different, it's like death metal, progressive metal. Death metal tends to be the poster child for everything that's bad about the music because of the way it sounds. But bands like Gojira, they talk about the environment and their concerns for it and use the music as a vehicle to promote that. And I feel like a lot of people can connect to that message even though they may not necessarily like the music. There's other bands in there that talk about social commentary and not death or destruction like anyone would imagine. And for this album, No Tolerance for Imperfection, they talk about society becoming increasingly judgmental, and there's this emphasis on everyone has to be perfect, everyone has to look perfect. And they beg the question, does it ultimately matter, and is it worth compromising your integrity and self-respect of being yourself? So if it's the average person, the subgenre of progressive metal would probably change their mind about the stereotype. Two bands in particular, Dream Theater or Symphony X. Dream Theater, there's a high technical proficiency just as in the rest of the subgenre, and their technical proficiency is undeniable. Songs like Panic Attack, the intro leave you floored with a combination of bass and drum intro. Each member has won numerous awards and recognition for their playing ability. Their guitarist, John Petrucci, was named number 2 out of the 100 greatest metal guitarists in a book by Joel McIver. Symphony X is another band. While not as popular as Dream Theater, they're still very talented and not just mindless music. Their 6th album was titled The Odyssey, and on that album there's a track that's 24 minutes long and details the plot of the Odyssey, the epic poem by Homer. And to me, that doesn't sound like just mindless noise going on for 24 minutes. It sounds pretty intelligent. And now I've talked a lot about the musicians, but I haven't mentioned any vocalists. And what the misconception about metal is it's all screaming and it's all just nonsense, but it's really not. There's a lot of incredible vocalists that sing cleanly and they're not screaming, they're not making noise. One of these vocalists is Ronnie James Dio, who replaced Ozzy in Black Sabbath and later became well known for his own solo band. He recently died in 2010 from stomach cancer, but upon his death, everyone spoke about how incredible a vocalist he was, and Rolling Stone described how he definitely did a lot more back in the 80s in that in some songs he empathized with women, and in other song, Invisible, he empathized with gay teenagers, and back in 1983 that was definitely a lot different than what most metal bands were talking about in their music, and that definitely breaks the stereotypical mold. And Rob Halford, Judas Priest, was another vocalist who can go from just lows to these really soaring, operatic, high-pitched vocals. He's famous for being vocalist of Judas Priest. Bruce Dickinson, another one from Iron Maiden, he's well known for his quasi-vocal tenor and just wide vocal range, multiple octaves. Songs like Run to the Hills or Races High or Hallelujah, and those are all good examples. As well as being labeled mindless noise, it's also been called satanic or evil, and as a whole that's unfair, but there have been some bands that have promoted that kind of stereotype. One of these bands that has been falsely accused happens to be Slayer, and using that image, and behind their name is usually a pentagram that has notoriety for being evil or satanic. What's funny is that all the members, none of them are satanic. most of them are atheists, and even the vocalist slash bassist, he's Catholic. And they don't write about it because they believe in it, they write it for shock value. They write about it because back then not a lot of people were talking about it and they want to differentiate themselves from the crowd, especially being in LA and during that time when there was a lot of hair metal bands talking about partying and girls and all that kind of stuff, and they wanted to change that. In an interview, when asked about the biggest misconceptions about Slayer, he talked about how it was all about Satan, and that's wrong because he believes in that. He talked about his beliefs in that Christ came here to teach how to love and to be, to accept everyone for who they are, regardless of belief. One of the most controversial album titles that was taken the wrong way, with a different meaning, was their 9th album called God Hates Us All, and it's not, Kerry King in an interview said this isn't an anti-Christian line at all. It's sort of as much as an idea he thinks a lot of people can relate to, because someone has like a terrible day where a lot of bad things happen, maybe they get into a car accident, or a family member gets sick or hurt, or they get hurt themselves, and it's just like you have that feeling of, God really hates me today, my day sucks, and that's what he meant to take it as, but a lot of people didn't, and that kind of accusation happens all over the genre. Slipknot's another band, not so much of being satanic, but of being evil because of their appearance on stage, the masks they wear. But the masks were never meant to be evil. They're meant to represent, Corey Taylor in an interview with the vocalist, it represents part of their personality and allows them to be unconscious to who they are outside of music, and just let everyone focus on music as a whole, what they make and not as themselves. And in another interview, the drummer, Joey Jordison, was asked why the masks changed. He said the masks represent the growth of the person and how the reflection of how the music makes them feel. And it's not about evil or satanic belief. During the concerts, they sometimes have a pentagram on stage, and like I said before, the notoriety of that is that it's associated with evil things, and so they're accused of being evil or satanic, but in actuality, it's used solely just for imagery. And honestly, a lot of these bands use it just to piss people off, and because they like that, they just enjoy that and they get off on that. There's one scene in metal that actually promoted anti-Christian beliefs or satanic beliefs, and this was like the early Norwegian black metal movement in Norway in the early 1990s, where they committed a lot of crimes, both the fans and the bands alike. And there was over 50 church arsons from 1992 to 1996 by both the members and fans, and some actually still support to this day those who committed and say they want more to come, but there's others in that genre that berate the rest of them because they say a lot of people just wanted acceptance, so like, we'll do the same thing and maybe they'll accept us into this big group. And honestly, I think it's pretty ridiculous, and I don't think it was right. But that's just one very small part of metal, and I don't think the actions of one band's belief should affect the genre of like thousands of bands and thousands of band members. On the second point, I alluded that another misconception tends to be that it's inherently violent and promotes violence, as it did with the crimes. But for the most part, it doesn't. When you look at an audience at a concert, from a distance, it does look dangerous and it does look somewhat violent, but having been in a couple, I admit from a distance it does, but when you're in there, it's actually, it's very safe. I've witnessed in like a mosh pit when everyone's like climbing against each other, someone got knocked to the ground, and two people that he didn't even know picked him back up so he wouldn't get hurt. And generally the crowd's like that. It's very friendly with one another, make sure no one gets hurt, and just make sure everyone's safe and they're going to have a good time, because that's all everyone wants to do there. And the bands promote that. They tell everyone if someone falls, pick them back up, support them. Everyone wants to hear, just listen to the music they enjoy. Everyone has the same, love for the music, and just enjoy it. I've been to other concerts of different genres. Last year I went to the 30 Seconds to Mars concert with a friend on campus, and the concert was a lot more dangerous than I've ever been like a metal concert. It was pretty rough in there, and people were pushing, trying to start fights. It just didn't have that same sense of camaraderie that I felt at a metal concert, where everyone you know, not there. I mean, there's always a jerk in the crowd that wants to start something with someone. And I'm sure there's been people there at the concerts I just haven't run into them. But there's just a sense of being greater than yourself when you're in the center of the crowd. And maybe some of you feel that way when you listen to your music, go see a concert. But that's just how I feel when I go to a metal concert. Violent acts such as murder and suicide are also blamed on metal, such as the Columbine High School Massacre. Everyone probably knows about it. It was pretty terrible what happened. But Marilyn Manson, the metal artist, was accused of being an influence on the two killers on their actions. It was eventually found that neither killer was listening to the music, and they didn't even like his music to begin with. So it didn't give them the reason to commit that heinous act of violence as so many people said. Marilyn Manson later wrote an article for the Rolling Stone titled "Columbine, Whose Fault Is It?" And in it, I'll quote him, is, "Man's greatest fear is chaos. It was unthinkable that these kids didn't have a simple black and white reason for their actions." And so a scapegoat was needed. I remember hearing the initial reports from Littleton that Harris and Cleo were wearing makeup and dressed like Marilyn Manson because they obviously must worship since they were dressed in black. So of course, speculation snowballed into making me the poster boy for everything that was bad in the world. And they weren't even wearing makeup, and they were dressed in black, but they did not look at all like Marilyn Manson. And they just saw black people. They saw like they dressed in black, and that obviously must mean something else. And more than anything else, though, it's not violent. It's an inspiration to a lot of people. Not a catalyst to commit atrocities. For myself, and people I know, for my friend, she's had a really hard life with her mom and dad separating and such. And when you see her love for metal, she's wearing like Iron Maiden or a Slipknot shirt, and she's talking about the band she loved. People might discount her immediately as being, you know, just another dumb teenager who does stupid things and gets into trouble. But the music actually provided an outlet for all that pain and hate and anger. And instead of committing the act of violence, she listened to the music and got all put up just to the music. And it helped keep her motivated to be the best person she could be. For every fan that I've met and every member of the band, they've always talked about it in a positive light. And it was indeed like a medicine for life's downs. And when speaking about mistakes they made, they never talked about metal being the influence for that mistake, but the influence to never make that mistake again. And for me personally, I've been deeply inspired by the music, and ever since 7th grade when I first heard Master of Puppets by Metallica, from then on I couldn't get enough of it, and discovering the music and the meanings behind the lyrics. It helped inspire me, as well as getting me through life's ups and downs. Events such as my father having surgery around a dozen times, and you know, that was pretty tough when I was younger, him going in and not knowing if he was going to come out the same, let alone alive. So music, for me, metal in particular, was very instrumental in keeping me up and going. There's also sort of the feeling of alienation that comes from being a fan of metal. We're wearing the shirt, a lot of people look at you, and they judge you. And so the misconceptions are that it's mindless and satanic and evil, and are all utterly false and offensive to anyone who listens to the music. Metal to me has especially never been a catalyst for violence. Instead, it has been a vehicle through which my pain and anger and anyone else's can be exercised in a way that is not self-destructive or harmful. It's funny because it's sort of like a spiritual kind of experience listening to music and going to the concert. And that's ironic because metal is considered godless. And to me, faith or spirituality doesn't necessarily be associated with God or religion, or any religious practice in general. It's just being passionate and loving something that you care about. And for me, the next time you see a band take a little closer look, it's not violent, but a liberation of pain, melancholy, and hate. And when you see that audience cry out and chant the name of the band or sing the lyrics to the songs as one entity, it's a sign of respect and thanks for a music, a band, a song, a lyric that gave them hope or even saved their life.